I'm going to read you Donna Beagle's eyewitness account of the discrimination of her autistic daughter on United Airlines. Now, you have to understand that United Airlines is the scum of all airlines as of now. I haven't seen or read such discrimination like this before. And this just shows how much arrogance plane services when there's first class. Okay. This is exactly what happened. This is her eyewitness account. I could be more upset with United Airlines, but I can't imagine it. My family were on our way home from Disney World. I asked the flight attendant if she had any hot food. Juliet will not eat cold food and had refused her dinner prior to the flight. We had a backpack of snacks, but she did not want what we had. The attendant sold me a chicken sandwich, but it was not hot and Juliet would not eat it. The flight attendant said that's all we have, which is obviously a lie. I asked if there was some hot food in first class. It was a very long flight, and and I wanted her to get something in her system. The flight attendant went to ask a male flight attendant in first class. He came back to tell me that they could not serve the hot food from first class because we were in economy. Pretty much, if you're flying on one of these flights, these planes are huge. They're 747s, and these if you don't know what a 747 airplane is, it's a huge airplane. It's a passenger airplane. It has a first class and then economy class. The economy class is pretty much, if you sit there, pretty much like me and you, who's ever watching this video, we're treated like shit in these areas. While the people in first class get the hot food, get the hot drinks and all that, you know, spa and all that. Anyway, I offered to buy the rice they had. He said no. For 40 minutes, I kept trying to think of something that they had that she would eat. He told me no every time. Finally, I told him I am platinum on United, thinking he might help. He said no. I again asked if he could make an exception for our daughter who faces autism. Okay, right there should have been like a sympathetic moment where he's like, oh, you know what, I'm sorry for being a dick. Yeah, I'll get your daughter a hot meal. Did this happen? No. He said no. He could not give her the rice from the first class. I asked if I could get some chips or something salty for her. He said they had no chips, which is obviously a lie, because first class almost has literally everything in the book. He said they had no chips. Juliet was beginning to cry, which the passengers said that, you know what, her crying wasn't more frustrating than crying baby on an airline, which I've been on flights with crying babies, and you know what, they're annoying, but you know what, they're not a threat either. Then she frustrated herself. She over-exaggerated and said, after she has a meltdown and cries to scratch in frustration, will you help her then? He said he would see what he could do. He came back, scowled at me, and gave her a hot meal. I thanked him and offered to pay for it. He did not answer and went back to first class. So pretty much an arrogant asshole who's a flight attendant, basically thinking he's better than economy passengers. Basically, the mother of this autistic child. So he basically handed her the hot meal in a pissed off attitude because this girl has autism. Look, people, I've seen autism in play. One of my acquaintances who I went to high school with, he's a teacher's assistant as a career. He works at Pottsville High. James Long, no, yeah, James Long, and he suffers from Asperger's, which is a form of autism. It's a less severe version of autism, but I've seen it in play. So I know what autism is, and this story pisses me off for the same reason that it should piss anybody off. Juliet ate and was watching Pocahontas when we heard the flight attendant say, "We will be making an unexpected landing in Salt Lake due to a passenger in the back having issues. We were in front of the plane and wondering what was going on. The plane landed and the flight attendant asked if there was a medical doctor on board. A man came forward 2 rows in front of us. The man said, 'I am fine.' The man there said, 'I am fine. I do not need a doctor.'" So pretty much they're covering their asses by basically saying, "Oh, is someone having a fever? Is someone having a cold?" No, that's not the problem. Their problem is with this autistic girl because she required a hot meal. Look, the mother was under enough stress, and I can understand because my uncle and I flew down to Florida a couple of times in the past, and I can understand the stress of leaving the hotel, making plans to like finish up the trip before heading back to the airport, and I understand this frustration as much as anybody who traveled through flight before understands that frustration, and I clearly get it, that she was under a lot of stress to get to this airport on time so they could get back to New York, and they were actually in Disneyland, and they were going back to New York, which is like a 4 or 5 hour flight, and that is a long flight for anybody who has autism or not. So anyway, it continues on. The doctor opened, the 2 paramedics came to the man 2 rows ahead of us. He said, again, he was fine. The paramedics left him and came to my row and said, "Everything okay here?" Confused, they said, "Yes." The paramedic said if Juliet was okay, and the mother replied, "She's fine." "Did she scratch someone?" Puzzled, I said, "No." The paramedic rolled his eyes, and then they had real work they should be doing, and they were going to leave. He warned me that we may be asked to leave the plane. I was completely baffled. Why? He said, "This happens more often than you might imagine." He told me if they asked us to get off the plane, we should just quietly get off. The paramedics left the plane. So the paramedics see this happen more than once, obviously. So someone who has medical issues, such as a serious one like autism, and a severe form of autism, they see this happen more than once with airlines. They see that these passengers get thrown off because they have autism, and they're a threat. They're an endangerment to people on airlines, which is total bullshit. But anyway, she continues. The police repeated that we need to... Oh yeah. Then 2 police officers approached our row. They said they needed us to exit the plane. I said why. The officer asked if Juliet was scratching someone. I again said no. I told them asked for a hot food to prevent a meltdown, and said we wanted to prevent her getting to that point of being upset and scratching when she sometimes does in frustration. I told the officer the flight attendant gave her the hot food and she had been fine the whole trip. The officer said they were going to still have us exit the plane. I told him this makes no sense. Nothing had happened. The passengers around us were telling the officers that Juliet was fine, there was no problem. The officers told us the captain is not comfortable flying to Portland with your daughter on this plane. You have to leave the plane. The captain never seen Juliet, nor had he come out of the front cabin. All the time they were talking to me, Juliet was happily watching her video. The officer exits again to quietly exit the plane. I was furious. I stood and shouted so the passengers could hear. Is anyone on this plane who feels threatened by our Juliet who faces autism? Has Juliet alarmed or harmed anyone on this plane? Passengers stood up and shouted, she's fine, leave her alone. She's not causing a problem. Let's go to Portland. This is ridiculous. And mouth to me, I am so sorry. So basically, this whole flight, so basically this whole flight was, you know, this kid was fine with the hot food, but then, you know, oh, autistic kid, you know what, I'm uncomfortable. And this pilot did not see this kid at all. So they made this unexpected landing, wasted paramedics' time, wasted the cops' time, and so the kid feels like she's the blame here, and she says, you know what, I'm sorry for this, and it's not her fault. Anyway, the police repeated that we need to leave the plane. The captain came out and said, first time they saw him, he said, let's not make the situation worse. It never was worse. You're making it worse. I said, you made it worse. You never seen Julia, and I have no idea what your flight attendant told you but nothing happened. I was so shaken, and tears began to fall. As Mom, I could not stand the way Julia was being treated, obviously, and then I would be, if I were on that plane, I would be one of the many passengers as well that's saying, leave this poor girl alone. You never saw Julia, and I have no idea where your flight is. I read that. I was so shaken that... Oh, okay. Back to where I was. I said I am not leaving this plane until I have statements and names showing that there's no issue, and no is emphasized in capitals. The officer said he wouldn't take statements. He came off the plane with 10 pages of passenger statements and showed them to me. Anyway. Yeah. He said, you know, we have some really violent cases where the plane should land. This is not one of those. You have a lot of people supporting your claim that nothing happened and your daughter should stay on the plane. He gave me the police report number and told me I can get copies of the report and the statements. It took some time for the crew to find our luggage. They rebooked us for a Delta flight leaving at the time when my kids should have been home in bed, getting ready for school the next day. We flew the rest of the way home as we've flown around the country with no problem. Juliet has flown since she was 6 months. She has been to 5 countries, 24 states, and we have never experienced anything like this. Most often the flight attendants go out of their way to make Juliet comfortable and happy. See, Donna, what you have to understand is those are compassionate people. They understand. They might know someone, or they might have kids that suffer from autism. These assholes on United Airlines, they don't have compassion. They're worried about their first class bullshit. That's all they're worried about. First class to them is like a religion on United Airlines. Delta Airlines does have a first class, but they don't treat the first class like they're special. They treat everybody on the flight like they're special, and the majority of these airlines treat everybody like they're special because you know why? All people who are on airlines are special VIP members because they chose to fly on this plane. But just because you're first class doesn't make you the hoity-toity of the whole fucking experience. And they know this, but they refuse to treat the economic class, like you and I, like that. They refuse to treat us like that because, oh, we're just the peasants of the plane. And I understand your frustration. This was a sheer case of ignorance. Exactly. Prejudice, ignorance, and mistreatment are all too common towards people facing poverty, like I just stated. The parallels between special needs and poverty are striking in both cases for judgment, misunderstanding, and mistreatment. Exactly. And obviously, you've experienced discrimination. Well, your daughter has experienced discrimination, and you're going to win this case no matter what because you have a first eyewitness account, and there's no way and no reason that you should have been treated like this, and or your daughter. I am stunned. They landed a plane and held everyone up. So is everyone else. They were pissed of the emergency landing for no reason whatsoever. Julia was in a window seat, and her dad was next to her. I was next to him. She was not a threat. I have contacted an attorney and will be filing a discrimination lawsuit to ensure the captain and the flight attendants getting trained. This is not about money. If it were about money, I would give the flight crew, I would give it to the flight crew to use for their training. You just heard the first eyewitness account, her eyewitness account of what happened. Now, of course, the airline is going to fix it around to make sure that the autistic kid was the threat. They're going to make sure that she was scratching people, that she was like acting like a zoo animal. You're going to see bullshit reports like that. And from a victim standpoint, you know, the victim has more of the believable story than the antagonizer, which is United Airlines. And I feel sorry that this happened to this poor 15-year-old girl who was causing no problem whatsoever. And I feel sorry for this mother who had to see her daughter being mistreated with prejudice and discrimination. And this goes for all airlines. If you're going to pull a dick move like this, or if you're inspired by United Airlines to discriminate against people who have autism, cancer, Crohn's disease like I do, MS, or any disease out there, you know what? Go fuck yourselves, and you're going to dig yourselves a hole where no one's going to fly on your business anymore. And you know what? People are going to start boycotting United Airlines for this exact bullshit.